importantly, if you really want your show to be successful, if you really want it to do what you put it on to do, why you're spending the money and time on it, you have to be putting the audience first. And most of them are not. There's still this is our agenda, this is what we want to achieve. And the kind of audience gets left to the end and then go, oh gosh, we got better think about attendee experience. And it's kind of like that should have been baked in, as they say, from the very beginning. That should have been your key ingredient, like your flour in the cake. You cannot make it without that. And yet, it's like if you've ever baked a cake and you put the flour in too late, you're like, oh, that's not worked very well, has it? And I feel like that's what a lot of events, many times done that. So it kind of became so obvious to me that that was what was missing in events. And I'd go and I'd be really bored and I'd be thinking, I'm bored and I'm the MC. How is that for everybody else? They just haven't got the spark. They haven't understood that it's about being involved every second. It's not about the glitzy moments that get fed in. Oh, we can do a bit of a razzmatazz here. I always remember someone sending something to me 3 weeks before the event, an organizer they had this really boring agenda, basically. It was deadly. And she contacted me and she said, oh, Claire, you go to loads of events. What's something really great that will add the wow factor that we can, pay for now, like an interaction or a thing? And I was like, oh, you kind of missed the point completely, which is you can't just shove that in and think that's going to make the difference from your very boring agenda. It has to be all the way through. I mean, I said it really nicely, but
Right.
there was no point in paying for a really expensive something. Yes, of course that would have helped, but that wasn't what was really needed and what was wrong with that agenda.
So that's kind of like putting frosting on that cake at the end that, it adds a little bit of sweetness, but it doesn't add any
Yeah.
substance
I mean,
to.
that's a nicer way of the way I would have said it. Um,
Well, sticking with your metaphor a little bit there, because
yeah,
that's
yeah,
one of my metaphors. I've been thinking about it like this recently. So if you were trying to build a house and you just got the construction crew out there and said, build me a house.
yeah.
They didn't have a blueprint and they didn't understand who they were building it for, which starts with an architect and what the design of it was and what's going to be unique about it, then you're going to get a house because these people know how to build houses, but it may not be what you wanted at all. And I feel like sometimes event planners do that. It's not their fault necessarily. Maybe they've been told, go create an event. And what they know how to do is execute events, but they haven't thought about what's that attendee experience from the beginning, which I agree with you. It's got to be baked in. Otherwise, it is going to feel like an extra.
Well, and a lot of people who are organising events, it might not be the only thing they're doing in their job. I'm finding that a lot actually, as more and more companies put on events. The client says, oh, we're having to run this event, and the organiser's internal, and they do millions of other things as well. So they only know the events that they go to, and they are going to probably copy last year as much as possible because that's the format they understand. And it ends up being, it looks very, very samey, and there's no consideration for the fact that maybe the people coming into that house or that event need different things now. The world's really changed. Our expectations are super high, and just turning up to a business event and it being what it was 10, 20 years ago, and some of them are still like that, as you know, it's not good enough anymore. It's not working. And they're kind of like, I don't feel involved. I don't feel included. I don't feel special. This is just blah. And they're then disengaged through a lot of it, or they're just going through the motions. And it's such a wasted opportunity because it doesn't have to cost a lot of money to get the attendee experience right. It's just, if you are thinking about that right from the beginning, it should just happen.
Yeah, let's get practical here because this
Mhm.
is great philosophically, and I'm in
Cool.
agreement, and probably a lot of people listening are. But let's talk about some questions that you ask that help you move the audience from disengaged to engaged. What are some things that you think about, ask the organizers so that you can get to know the audience in advance?
Well, obviously, who are these people? What do they expect? What do they want from the day? Why are they coming? Do they have to come? Have they bought a ticket? Is it a three-line whip from their boss? All of those things are really important because you then understand the mood when they walk in the door. Are they there because they're really excited about being there and they would have come whatever and they've paid a fortune for it, like going to see your favorite band? Or are they there because, I don't know, they're going to get chartered surveyor points, or what do they call it, CPD points in the UK? I don't know what they call it around the world. And or are they there because they'll get sacked if they don't, or are they, and are they coming with the right frame of mind, or is it just something massive on top of everything else they have to do, because that's going to make an enormous difference. And if they are coming, why are they coming? We've kind of established that. Are they coming? Are they telling you that they're coming because network, they want to meet people? That's the most important thing. They want to do business. All of those things. You will have an agenda, they have an agenda. You really need to understand their agenda. So whilst you're sort of putting your agenda across, you're keeping them happy. And I was related to when I was training people, and I still do train people in media training, so businesses how to talk to the press and get their stories in and get invited back on again. It is that making sure that the agendas cross and link and have something to work together, because if you do that, that's the sweet spot. And I think it's when you cater, what's your agenda? Why are you having the event? What do you want them to take away? Why do you think they're coming? How is that matching? Is it matching? Have you thought of ways to do that? And if they just say, well, yeah, we've got a networking session, we've got, my pet peeve, warm wine at the end of the day, networking with really loud music. I'm like, well, they said very specifically that they need to meet key target people, and you haven't allowed that to happen. Or you've enabled it in a very ephemeral sort of not really effective way, where it's just like they're all in a room, let's hope for the best. You're not doing anything, you're not spending any money on making that networking really special. And that's a key point you've missed. Also, are they coming because they're really senior and they want to share stuff as well? In which case, have you got spaces in your agenda for them to talk and share? Not just 5 minutes at the end of a session for Q&A. Have you made sure that it's a workshopy style event? Have you thought about all of those things? And you'd think that that would be considered, but it's not always, because people aren't even aware you can do that. I did an event 2 weeks ago when they wanted to do the sum up at the end of the day, that bit when they were like, so what we'll do is someone will get notes in all the sessions, because you won't be able to go to all of them because there's lots of kind of ones running at the same time, and they'll give them to you and then you'll feed them back into the room. And I was like, well, let's not do that. Let's get everybody in the room and we walk around and we get them into groups to come up on each table with what they thought the best things were, and then we walk around with a microphone and ask each table, because then they're sharing it. And the thing that the person on table B says, table D says, oh, yeah, no, we thought that too. Rather than me, who wasn't even in the sessions, telling them what they should have taken away, it also gives the organisers a really good lesson of, did they actually take away the stuff we wanted them to take away, And they had the CEO going around with me, and he would say, what about this? Nobody remember this. This was really important to me. And it was good that he was being able to remind them of things that maybe they hadn't primarily thought of. But I also hope that when they got that feedback, they went, okay, do you know what? That obviously didn't land then, that whole session, because nobody remembered it. And it was much more fun for a start. Everybody was included, as many people as could speak as we had time to get round the tables to do. And it was just those little things can make a really big difference. It didn't cost any money at all. It just was a little bit more thoughtful.
But it caused the organizers to have to change their mindset about the agenda of, well, this doesn't fit my model of a typical session. Maybe my client, my boss, someone's not going to like it that I changed the way we're doing things. So you have to, maybe you as an MC, you as someone coming in advocating for the attendees, have to convince them, let's try this. I promise you, you're going to get better results by doing this. And maybe it's only 1 or 2 experiments that you're taking because you can't push them way out of their comfort zone.
No, you have to limit. You have to limit the change. You can't shove loads in. At the time when it works most effectively is if I'm in early enough that I'm able to have conversations with the client. It's really difficult if they're hiring you, and this one actually they did. They hired me a month out, and because I think the client was incredibly indecisive about lots of things. And they were like, there are things we've really tried to put in. They were quite an adventurous event organizer in that sense. And the clients pushed back on absolutely everything, but we've managed to do this. We've got you on a call with them. So if you could push whatever you think you could push, and we'll see. And there were things we could change and things we couldn't. And I also feel there were bits one of the guys went, yeah, I really would have wished that we had actually had more planning and time to do this thing. And we were like, quietly sort of thinking, we did actually try and ask, but he got the message a little bit late, but it's fine. Next year they'll be able to do that. And it is a matter of which I've had to kind of get myself used to. You can't get them to do everything. Some people it is tiny steps. Other people it's quite dramatic for them, and you're thinking we really did absolutely very little different, but to them it felt huge. But then it meant that next year they were much more confident about doing something different.
Let's talk about the event where the people are being forced to come. The boss said they had to come, or is because they have to get those continuing education credits. Both of those are forced. The boss says, or the company says, is harder because that person's reluctantly coming. The accreditation one, at least they understand why.
Yeah.
This is important because of my career. But let's take those two separate audiences because they're the most resistant coming into the event. How do you change the event? How do you advocate on their behalf so that it becomes something that they change from resistant to, oh man, this was so good. I'm excited now about what this was about, going back to work, whatever it is.
One of the first things I would do, and obviously it's not always what the client wants, and so we have to do a little bit of work on that, is kind of name that elephant in the room. Talk about that.
Mhm.
Talk about the sense that I know you guys don't want to be here, or say it like that, but we understand that some of you didn't want to be here today, da, 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 and almost talk to them like we understand that. And I don't want this session to be like double maths on a Friday when you were 16. Do you remember, how awful that was? I don't want to be the teacher doing that. You kind of make that joke, you kind of explain that. You normally will get a laugh from them. They're looking a bit sheepish because they know it. And if they're bosses and the people who do it are there and they're engaging full on and they're doing it all, then you see that. Because a lot of people say, well, this is really important. We need to have a team building moment. And, a lot of people think team building at work, kill me now. It's the last thing I want to do is hang around with these losers that I have to spend all day in the office with in my free time. So if you are going to do that, you've got to put in all the stuff that they will like. And not in a cheesy way. I think sometimes I see them and I was like, these people are adults. They're not 16-year-olds at school. So if you have made them do something they don't want to do, you have to give them what they would like as well. And you do see some businesses think that all they have to give them afterwards is a big, booze up in the bar, and that's kind of maybe not what everybody in the room wants. So it's just those thinking of the different individuals who've been forced to come, what they would like as an alternative. I would try and say build in a good lunch, good time for lunch. Don't just cram all the sessions in. You should do that for every event, but you know what it's like. They're thinking we've got them in a room, we've got them between 10 and 4, we're going to shove as much in as we can. And I think, still give them the breaks, still consider all those things, still treat them as adults, but make sure there's lots of fun stuff in there. And maybe the unexpected thing as well. They're not always expensive. They can be to put in a kind of, what is the word that I'm thinking of? I tried to use it earlier when you have somebody come maybe and play drums at your event, or do those
Entertainment or an activation or
activation. That's the
yeah.
word, activation. But don't just put a cheesy one in for the sake of it. Really think, is it going to tie into what we're doing? Is it
Mhm.
relevant? All of those things. I do find a lot of activations which could be fun. They're not really tying in. They're kind of like we've shoved it in because we know there's a boring session out and a boring session afterwards. So the activation needs to play in. But it is that. Why don't they want to come? What can you put in it so they would come? And how can you be telling them that you hear them, that you know they maybe don't want to be there? Exactly as you would do if you had a bunch of, I don't know, disaffected youngsters who were forced to come and do something, or if you were, I don't know, you had community service or something, which it was fully what it feels like to some people. You would be trying to bring them with you on the journey. And I just think sometimes that's not being considered. And they're looked at as a big group of sort of naughty children who should be there and don't want to come. And I think it's just switching that around a bit.
You can't in one event change the culture that forced these people to come.
Yeah.
With if it's like what you described, that I really don't want to spend any more time with these people than I have to. I'm going to work because it's a paycheck and I don't enjoy it. You can't solve that in an event, but you can maybe make a difference. I'm wondering if you can think of an event, and you don't need to name it, so disguise any specifics, but can you think of an event where you took an audience from being reluctant to being glad and energized about the reason that they came and some of the things that you did in particular? Because I'd love to get into the like some real tactics here.
Yeah, I mean, again, you are limited with what the client will let you do, but there's a few when I've done a few which are mergers. So you bringing different parts of companies together who really don't like each other and may have been in competition before, who are worried about losing their jobs and rights and all the things that part of the business that they're in is suddenly changing. And it's just really working with the senior leadership team who are having the event to get them to be as honest as possible, to start scrapping a lot of the scripting, to not allow them to have everything pre-prepared, to make sure there are polling platforms, anonymous polling platforms, so people's questions will come up. Now, obviously, they're scared someone's going to say something really offensive. But as I try and say again when I do the media training, what looks like a really negative question isn't necessarily a negative question. It's how you choose to frame that. And you can practice your potential answers. You can have your lines to take that you've agreed within the kind of HR structure of what's allowed to be said, but you're addressing it really honestly. And you see the feedback from people. You see when they see their questions are being acknowledged. And you pick, a lot of people might ask the same questions and someone might ask it in an angry way. You'll pick not the rudest, angriest question to answer, but you'll say, look, there's a lot of questions about this. We can't ignore this. We can't pretend it's not an issue. How are you going to answer that? How are you going to help people with that? And if they don't know, really have said to them, if you don't know, make sure you say that, because a lot of time they go, no, we're not going to do those questions because we haven't decided that yet, or we're not going to do this because we think that might cause anguish. And I'm like, no, you have to. You have to. And when they do, you really see the audience kind of go, oh. And when I'm in the loo or whatever and I'm just chatting or getting a drink, you hear people say, and they'll say to me, God, I thought this was going to be awful, but I'm really glad that you asked them that question. And I don't go journalisty on them, but I'm saying to the people beforehand, let me do that. Let me play that. But sorry, Jim, I don't think that's going to be an answer. Not in a bad way, but we've planned and we've talked about it. They're not going to get anything shocking, but audience sees they've been honest. And I think those ones work really well. Again, you have to have people brave enough to do that. Not every organisation will. And that tells me a lot about the culture within it. And you think, well, no wonder nobody wanted to be here. And you can't change everybody. Some people will say, oh, yeah, no, really, that was brilliant. I'm so glad you slightly forced us to do that. And, if there are games that are being played, if there are interactions, make sure they do it too. Because it's amazing how many times they'll be like, yeah, well, that's not for me, is it? That's for the... I'm like, no, they need to see the chief executive make a fool of himself and do that too. They really need to see that. Because if they're doing it, you should be doing it. When you get them to do that, it's so good.
This is really good because you're not talking about just the event where everybody came and paid the thousands of dollars because they want to learn and they've got the intention. Like, you're dealing with real issues. You're reminding me of a story that Park Howell, who is a storytelling expert for businesses, and he told me about an architecture firm where they were going through a merger and a massive change, and people were resistant to the change. And so they brought them together for what looked like an annual meeting. Everybody's in these metal folding chairs in this auditorium, and they've got the platform set up. It's not even beautiful. All the executives are up there in their suit and ties. And someone starts the meeting and begins to drone on and on. And then the CEO gets up and says, no, this isn't the way this is going to work. And he rips off his coat and he's got a Superman costume under his coat. And he tells everybody, I want you to stand up and I want you to follow me. And some great music happens and they take him to a party. And so they shifted. They knew what was happening. They knew no one wanted to be there. They're like, oh, we're doing this because it's the annual meeting. Here we go again. Then all of a sudden it shifted. And it feels to me like if you've got something major like that with a merger or some really hard things, that you got to bring everybody out of their comfort zone. And like you've said, the leaders have to set the stage. You may not go to that extreme of, dressing up, but it was alarming enough, shocking enough. It's like, oh, something different is happening here. And all of a sudden it awakens some excitement.
Well, also what he specifically did was he acknowledged to
Yep.
those people, in whatever way you choose to do it, we hear you. We know that this is awful and you don't want to be doing it because we're going to make it fun and different. But he's by kind of shocking them, which works as well. But you're literally saying, so people feel heard. And we know that people need to be seen, they need to feel heard, they need to feel that they matter, that they've been listened to. We know that's like a huge key part of the human experience. And if you give people that in whatever way it's going to work for you, and it just works for your event, whichever is specific. In this case, a lot of malcontents don't want to be there, really cheesed off with the whole situation. You're acknowledging, we know that, and we're going to make it different, and we're looking out for you, and we're trying to do this. People hear, that's what they hear, that's what they feel, even if you can't explain what it is. You just have that feeling that, oh, okay, They are going to let me speak, or they are going to acknowledge me, even if I can't speak because there's thousands of us. My voice will be represented, and that's the kind of thing I want to do as an event organizer, not an event organizer. I've lost my parasite. Let's start that bit again.
MC.
Pause. That's what I would try and do as an MC, is that represent the audience. So sometimes there is no way we can get actually a Q&A session going because of time or the amount of people, but it's acknowledging it. So it's having somebody who can ask questions, or who can put a place for them to do it, and me being able to respond to it and say, so we're getting questions in about this. The guy John here in Alaska said this, if it's an online one, or because not everybody is John in Alaska, but people think, well, if they're listening to John in Alaska, I could be John in Alaska. I'm getting my voice heard. It's like when you have phone-ins, radio phone-ins, and someone phones in with a problem like yours. It's not your problem. No one's listening to your problem, but they're listening to that problem, which represents your problem, and you feel included and represented. It's why we talk about representation on television and in public life, so that everybody feels that someone who looks, sounds, and feels and comes from their experience is being listened to. That's something that's really important, and we can do that in events, however big they are. It's just being clever and intentional and making sure those voices get heard, all the diversity of voice gets heard. And I don't mean by that just shove a DEI panel or EDI panel, whatever it gets called up, and say, look, and ask them questions. That's not enough anymore. You've got to really make sure that every single person in the room has a way of being heard. And that's easy to do now. Digitally, you can get their voices beforehand. Don't just wait for feedback as well. Get it beforehand. You told us you wanted this, we're doing this. You don't have to say it as cheesily as that, but that's the kind of idea behind it.
It almost sounds like you have to get permission from both groups to be a bridge. You need to get the permission of the attendees, the audience, the employees, depending on the type of event, to that you're going to be their advocate, and you're going to be the bad guy in a way, because you're going to say the hard things that need to be said, but you've also got to get the permission of leadership to say those things, and that they're willing to have an honest conversation about the things that are being said, but are not, that are being said in private or in the coffee room, but maybe aren't being said so that the leadership can hear it. Does that sort of describe the role that you're
Yeah,
playing?
I mean, I sort of like a two-way microphone in a way. In that,
Yeah.
obviously there's the microphone that I hold, and or I'm mic'd up or whatever, but also I don't want to feel that microphone's just me broadcasting and just broadcasting what the client wants. And there's a lot of, I suppose, how intentional this is in my marketing. But I always remember someone saying to me, don't just market yourself the way you think that your perfect client, that the ideal client wants to hear, or that any client wants to hear. When you're just trying to get, well, you're just trying to get a job, aren't you? Just think about what your ideal client is, somebody who really gets the audience experience. So talk about those kind of things. You are going to repel a whole load of people who don't get that. You are going to get a load of people who don't think that the microphone, you shouldn't get me on an afternoon. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here. I've lost the power of speech. On a microphone, they just want you to do what they say. They almost just want you to put that out. They don't want you to be getting anyone else's voices back. So I don't want those kind of clients, if you know what I mean. I don't want to work with people who don't care about what their audience has to say until the feedback page. So it's going to always be a push and pull, because somebody in the group that's hired you will want you to be doing exactly that. Other people will not. So you are always kind of be trying to keep everybody happy. But if they can be brave enough to actually take the voices of the audience and use them and give them space to talk, and their event's so much more successful, and they achieve the goals that they had for the event, and then they kind of get it, and then you're away. The potential's really high, and the next event there's even more opportunities for people to engage. So you're kind of, a two-way microphone, I guess.
Yeah, the cost of not doing this is pretty high. So clearly, if leadership's willing to bring this kind of event together, then they understand it's needed. Maybe they're doing it because we always do it, but hopefully they're doing it because they know there's a value of having this event. But the cost of not listening and people staying passive is inoculation. Like,
Yeah.
people are just going to say, "Oh, this is how it is," and this is my theory. The best people are going to be looking for a way to leave,
Yeah.
and the mediocre performers are just going to live with it. And so the
Yes.
cost to the business is extreme. because now you've got average performers or people who are just kind of quietly quitting or just staying there because they need a paycheck, but they don't really want to go and assert themselves. The cost of not having these conversations openly seems pretty extreme.
Well, I mean, with internal events obviously depends on their whole culture within a business as well. So, obviously we've been talking sort of more specifically about some of those events so far, but it's across the board. If you have it with a big, expensive, huge kind of public event, someone else will set up and do what you're doing better than you're doing it. They are so
Yep.
cutthroat. They'll be coming to your event. If you're a big association and your competitors in other associations that could steal bits of those groups and would take you, or if it's a big event with exhibitions or whatever, people will see you're doing it badly and they'll set up on their own. I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting at an exhibition and you'll hear someone saying, "Oh, well, I've got an idea for an event that's bigger and better than this," because people can see it. So if you don't change, ultimately you are going to not survive. But I just think that people are still pushing and thinking they've got a few more years to change. And I think it's the classic case that a lot of people who are still in those decisions, and these aren't the event organisers, these are the people in businesses, are, getting older, stuck in their ways, like it the way they like it. I did lots of exciting events during COVID, post COVID, that were about engaging people because we were limited in the way that we could have them in person. So we did loads online, or we did lots of, those ones when you had listening parties and we were in a studio, and they were great because they invited the whole audience, the whole business would be there, or lots more people than would normally go to an event could do it. And then as soon as it went back in the room, it was like those people were dropped like a hot potato because they went back to doing events the way they'd always done them. So this whole engaged audience was lost, which I think was absolutely crazy. But in the organisations that happened in, it was always somebody very senior and old and, pale and stale and probably male. When I always want to go back to doing it the way I did it before. I didn't like all those changes over COVID. And, we saw that, the loss of virtual events businesses, lots of them went to the wall straight afterwards. I think it's really naive now, based on all the issues that we're having in the world, that we're not keeping those options open, because so many events are changing, particularly in North America where you are. But I've seen that too. I've seen clients say, we're not having an event this year, we're going to go every other year, we're going to wait and see. So if you are not thinking of changing and adapting, there's lots of reasons why you're going to fail, not just because of engaging the audience, but just also using the modern technology and using the modern ways, using all the things that we've learned from over the last few years. If you're not changing your events that way, it seems bonkers to me. You're going to lose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have been talking mostly about internal meetings, but I think you're right. If you move to these other types of meetings, whether it's accreditation or just an industry event where people are coming to learn and stay on the cutting edge as well as to network, if you're not creating an event where people are engaged, then those people are missing out. And if
Yeah.
they shut down, they've lost the benefit. And my theory is that they won't come back. They
Yeah.
won't recommend it, which is bad for your event in the long term. Accreditation, they have to keep coming back, but they're going to put in the minimal effort, and it's just not going to be best for them. You want them to actually be excited to stay on the cutting edge of their craft, because that actually helps the world. And then the industry event helps the world too. If you can get them engaged and excited and passionate, then that's where all the innovation starts to arise. And they start to say, well, I was at that conference and that's where everything changed for me. And now all of a sudden your conference has the reputation of that. But that starts with understanding the attendees, right?
Yeah, because otherwise you're just sort of saying, oh, I've got to go to this because it's the only really big one in my industry. I really hate it. It's really crappy. But I have to go because that's where I'm going to, I have to show my face and I'm going to see some of my clients. I do hear people say that kind of thing. And you think, that's awful, isn't it? They're having to go to this expensive event they don't really want to go to because it is literally the only one in their industry that is the right one. But many industries, there's a lot of competition for that now. So you have to. And you can engage people all the way. We talk about that pre-event engagement and the after-event engagement. And it's also, I think it's really obvious to me that you should be recording the content at these events, the educational content, particularly if these are ones with a lot of educational content, but also with, I don't know, stands and stalls that people have to visit and lots of pre-organized and pre-arranged meetings, because you cannot do all three things. You can't. You can't. So most people end up missing out on the education, and the education can be amazing. I think of some of the event industry education's really, really good. But if you've got a day of meetings, you don't go to any of that education, any of that content. And you should be going to, even if it's targeted at someone sort of adjacent to your job, if it's targeted to an event planner, but you are working in event tech, you should still be going to that because you should be knowing what they're caring about and understanding and bothered by. And you should be able to listen to the kind of things that people say there. And most of those people don't get it. I sit there and I talk to people on stands and they've seen nothing of the education at all. And that to me is such a loss to the education of the industry in general, but also to the voices and the different kind of ideas that will come out of it. It's like those industry events where they make everybody pay an absolute fortune to go, who's not paying to have a stand there, which I find you're limiting the voices and the audience and the sound and the potential and the diversity of it. Does that make sense?
Totally. All right. So majority of people listening to this show are not in your role, but they're actually organizers. They might own an event or they are the planners who are helping to put on an event. This might be their first event, which is great because they can take your feedback to heart. They've been doing events for a while and they want to seriously upgrade it because they understand that they've plateaued and they need it to be better. So if you could give those kinds of people a couple pieces of advice to help them advocate better on behalf of the attendees, what would those two pieces of advice be?
Oh, to help them advocate better on advice the attendees. Good one. Okay, well, first of all, would they want to go to their event
That's a great
if
question.
they were an attendee? Or are they just doing the cut and paste from last year's Excel? Because that's a really, that's such a key one. I actually have put out today a little ranty video on LinkedIn in which I am talking about that. Why are we so stuck to the style that we have? The metaphor that came to mind was it's like we have a sofa in events. We have to have a sofa. And all you can really do is plump up the cushions or buy new cushions or maybe change your sofa occasionally, but it's still the assumption that this is the only way you can sit in your sitting room is on a sofa. And what about if we don't need a sofa anymore? We're going to sit like this. We're going to try this. It feels like if anyone ever does that, it's too difficult. And I'm saying by that, you don't have to have a keynote, 3 plenary sessions, a fireside chat, and a whatever. It's like, will that keynote deliver what we want? Does that work to actually do what the goal of the event is? Will a panel do that? Or is a panel just us going, we need to do a panel because otherwise it's too many straight white men talking. We need it to look more diverse. Are we hiring a female MC, which happens because everybody else there is a man? That's just ridiculous. None of these decisions are being made. Are they going to? Is your event going to deliver what your attendees need to get from it? Are you going to get everything right for your event? Those decisions are not made from the right standpoint at the beginning. They're just kind of ones you're making because you have to make them, but you're not thinking, hang on, everything we do should be, is this going to deliver our goal? Is this going to excite our attendee? Everything, every plan that you make. So it's not just we're going to have a panel, we're going to have a keynote because we have to do that. It's going to be, we've actually done the work and looked at the results from last year and got the feedback and got the understanding that a keynote is really important at 9 o'clock in the morning and we can justify it. And nobody does that, but I really wish they did.
Well, and it sounds like good business strategy. Good business strategy starts with the end in mind, and then you back up to what are the decisions that we need to make. But like the client you talked about who waited till the last month, you can't do it if you wait till the last month. If you start 6 months out or 9 months out or a year out, depending on the size of the event and the impact, then you've got time to ask those questions and make sure you have the right things in place and do the experimenting, the activations that you want and address what the concerns are. Now, if you had a merger, you probably do have to have that meeting pretty quickly. That's a whole different deal, but that's really setting the stage for an open conversation. So I think we're talking about regular events that people
Yeah.
are doing that really can start early and ask those questions that you're asking because those are super important.
I mean, my other key bit of advice is use the hive mind that's involved in your event because I think there's a lot of siloing in events. So, for example, when I say that I get hired quite late in the process, because it's like we're doing this, we've got our agenda set, we've got this, we've got to talk this, and then we're going to go, oh yeah, we're going to do an event, an MC, let's get an MC. And it's kind of like that MC or any of your suppliers at your event goes to lots of different events in lots of different industries, lots of different things are being seen and understood. They've got big contact book, They kind of get an idea of what's going on. They see things that have worked and don't work. You can use that brain and that result, that sort of information from all the people who are supplying your event. I feel it's so weird. You know, I talk to lots of AV people who go, I've turned up and there's something that we do as a key thing in our business, and they've hired someone else to do that bit. We could do that bit. They didn't need to hire two of us. And it's because they didn't talk. They went, oh, we're going to you for this and we're going to go for you to this. And they haven't understood they could have got everything in one place, but also that your event platform might know someone who does this and who does that, and they might work with them regularly. They might have ideas. Get them all together and use that very expensive talent that at some point you've hired for the event, because obviously within reason you can't expect everybody to come to every single meeting, but there's so much. I can't tell you how many times people go, oh, I didn't even know you could do that, just in casual chat at the event. I'm going, yeah, I could have done that, or I knew someone who could have done that, or this could. You don't know till you ask, or till you have those conversations and you open your mind up to the fact that everybody's helping you with your event knows loads. Use it. And I'm always blown away that people don't.
It's a really very good point. You're doing probably what, 20, 30 events a year as an MC. A production company is doing dozens, if not hundreds, events a year in their role. So you're able to see a lot of things that I don't see if I'm doing one or two events a year. And
Yeah.
why wouldn't I tap into the expertise of people who are able to learn and experiment much faster than me? You're going to make my event better if I tap into your abilities instead of assuming that I know everything that is out there.
Yeah. And I do get the odd person who will say, oh, Claire, we're going to use you again at next year's event. If you come up with stuff this year, just, put it in a note, and a few months out, or send it to me. And I will then say, oh, I saw this at an event. I thought of it for next year's event for you. Don't know what you're doing. And it's not like, oh, you have to hire me next year, but it's more like, I saw this. I thought it would be great for your event. Sometimes they reply right back to you. Sometimes they probably think, oh, she just wants to get hired again. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm just sharing the love. But it blows my mind that people aren't asking. And also, I don't necessarily know. If I don't know their event, I don't know what to tell them about. So it is worth having a chat. Claire, we're going to talk to a couple of MCs. When someone says that in a preliminary meeting, like maybe before they've hired you and they're looking at a couple of other people, if they ask, what are you seeing that's really interesting in events at the moment? Or what do you see that gets missed? So few people ask that. They're normally just telling you, this is what we're doing. Can you do it?
Right.
And then they'll give it to whichever MC convinced them in the call that they can do it, rather than what are your ideas? So, yeah.
Well, I think if you position yourself as a partner as opposed to just
Yeah.
talent, then you're
Oh,
much
yeah.
more likely to be hired again, because now all of a sudden you are advocating for them as well as the attendees, and you want their show to be better, more impactful. MCs out there, take that to heart. Become a partner, not a talent. It's not just a
Yeah.
gift. It's a chance to really make a difference. So
And I think
Claire,
understand that when you're hiring people, when you're hiring an MC, get them in early, because then they are a partner, as opposed to getting them in late where they're just the sort of person on the stage. I think it's just used. Everything is expensive attached to events. So everything that you're investing in, it's just kind of squeezing as much out of that investment as you can. And I'm not, obviously not to annoy everybody and overwork them, but just think, there's a brain attached to that person on the stage. Could be using that, asking them how they could help our event. What other services do they offer that I could use? There's so many times that I'll see a video of somebody that's being played at this event, and it's really awkward and terrible and mortifying, and the person absolutely hated it. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I do loads of working with people to make them more confident on stage and things. And you could have used me, honestly. I probably would have done it as part of my deal, to be honest, because I'm working with you. But if not, it would have been very cheap. And then comparatively, you're already using me for me on the day before, because I'm in the hotel ahead of your event. I could have helped you. And they're like, I didn't even know you do that. You're like, okay. And I'm not going to be telling them I do that every time I speak to them, because, that's very awful. By the way, I do this, everything. That's just not the way people are. But it's just think around the problem. Oh, these people are very skilled. How else could I use them?
yeah, I think, one of my other guests, Quinn Conyers, talks about get on the calls as soon as you can, because in that
Yeah.
context, you're going to be able to offer insights and say, hey, I can take that off your plate because that's what I
Yes.
do. So you're not coming in trying to sell services, just like, okay, you hired me for whatever, 10,000 pounds in your case, $10,000. I'm going to be a part of your team. I'm
Yeah,
not
you can't
just
get rid of
getting
me.
there to be on stage. I'm going to be part of your team because I want to see your show succeed. And I can't do that unless I get to be part of the conversations that you're having. And I want to add as much value as I can. When I'm on site, I'm there 24/7. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not checking, emails, serving other clients. I am there. You will know that I'm there with you. I think when you have that kind of attitude, me as an event organizer, I want you back because I can tell when someone does that versus someone who's just showing up and doing their little bit. And I have to. There's one guy I had to find him to make sure, and I was thinking I was going to have to fill in for him because no one knew where he was. It's like, okay, that's not good,
Yeah.
right? So, well, we have covered a lot of ground here, Claire. I'm going to move us toward our saxophone ending. So I want you to think of 3 words that stand out to you from this conversation.
Oh, that's a really good one. I thought I had them and then I changed my mind. Um, the idea of the advocate, because everybody could be an advocate for the audience, and the event planner can be an advocate for the audience. And I think it's remembering that all the way through, just to advocate for your audience all the time and try and use that as the pushback. That's super important. And also persuade, because I think it is a lot of persuading and patience because they aren't going to change overnight. And if you are an event planner and you work with a regular client or you're an internal event planner, you will know, oh my guys, they don't like this, they don't want to do this. That's the mentality that you're going to have. And you just have to be really patient, and just tiny little steps will make the event better. It just may not happen all at once.
I love it. All right. So advocate, persuade, and patience.
Does that help?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Thank you so much, Claire, for being on the show today. Please tell everyone where they can find you and learn more about what you have to offer and connect wherever you want to go.
Of course, yeah. So the best place to find me is LinkedIn. I'm there pretty regularly, and I share lots of stuff and answer my messages pretty quickly. So yeah, connect with me and send me a message. Say hello. Tell me what you do.
All right, Claire, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks very much.
Folks, let's go change the world one event at a time and make the world a better place. See you next time.